are cards that should increase in playability in Rise of the Floodborn. Scott, we are, 6 weeks, yeah, give or take, something like that. A little over 6 weeks till release.
A little less. Yeah, right about 6 weeks.
Yeah, right about 6 weeks. So with that, it's always fun to look forward by kind of, addressing the present. And there's definitely cards that are in the present that we've been saying have needed support. Each and every set comes out, and we're going to get cards with, that can support these cards. So the first card we have here is Ariel, Spectacular Singer. Now, which is comical because at the end of the day, this is a character, a storyborn hero princess that's already in arguably one of the best decks in the game. So it's comical to see that, like, oh, this is going to get even more support, and maybe you actually will start seeing this in other decks and things like that. So what about Spectacular Singer is the reasonings why this is a card that will just, evergreen get better?
I just assume there's more and more songs in every set. So the more songs there are, the better those songs are, the more inkable songs there are, the more that she can hit with her musical debut ability, which makes her more consistent, gives her better card draw, helps the deck find the pieces that it needs, etc. And then the Singer 5 will probably also have more effect. I'm not positive that you're going to get a ton of literal 5-cost songs, but like even like a bunch of 4-cost songs would help her as well. And we didn't put Sebastian on here, but like that would be kind of the same theory, but his stat is good. So like to me, it's just literally every like song should be in every set. And I can't imagine there being like a better way of finding them built into a character than this. So I mean, she's always going to fit really well on Curve, and so like in terms of the song synergy, I just think she's 100% there. Again, like you said, like she's already seeing a ton of play as it is, but like to me, she'll just get better and better. And the other thing is she is a princess, so if we get additional princess energy that's beyond Moana, I think that she'll see additional play there as well.
So this is a common theme in Disney Lorcana that we didn't particularly get for this card, but her ability musical debut could very well likely end up on an action card.
Sure.
Would that action card be playable?
If
depending on cost.
If it costs like if it costs 1, yeah. If it costs 2, borderline. You'd probably have to see like an additional card if it costs 2.
So if it was 3 but looked at the top 5, we might consider it still.
Not if it costs 3, I wouldn't play it.
Not if it costs 3. So it's like 2 or less, period.
Yeah, because it's just not. You're giving up the ability to play a character, and I like the fact that it's built. This is built into a. Mm-hmm. I mean, on Curve, decent statted character. Maybe, I mean, she's not like spectacular. No pun intended in terms of like stats, but she's not underpowered in my opinion.
Right.
Considering that she most of the time draws you a card, and it's a specific type of card that you generally want to be playing.
Right.
It's like the only song I know that sees play that you don't want to play is like Hakuna Matata, and then she's just there to get you specifically get you an ink.
That sees play, right? I would say there's a bunch of songs that aren't currently seeing play that
sure.
And for what it's worth, there will be more songs that won't see play. So
sure.
In every single set, I probably assume, I don't know, maybe a third of them will actually be like quote playable cards, with maybe some uptick like later on evergreen ability, like in a world where Sudden Chill becomes playable next set because of more discard, maybe, right? Like I don't know, who knows? Yeah. Hard to say. Obviously, the other notable card, Singer in general, should have been more of this. There's a slide a little bit further on that's kind of saying something similar, but like Cinderella as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only 3 singers, if I remember correctly. So her, Sebastian, and Cinderella. It's a keyword that likely we'll get more of also, so we'll have more characters that can sing, but like singer, songs, Ariel, that all just kind of meshes together. And then, like you said, additional princess synergy. I don't even think it matters for this card. Like, no, even if she wasn't a princess, like she would probably still see play in Amber Princess decks just because, you need to find your pieces with Be Our Guest and things like that anyway. So I don't even think that it matters.
Yeah, I mean, this is a card that basically was grossly undervalued from a currency perspective, like when the game first launched, and basically until almost like the first couple weeks of the game,
Yeah.
regular versions were just way undervalued, and now I think I still think she's kind of a little undervalued, but at the same time, like there's other issues going on with like restocks and things like that. But I do think like overall as a super rare, if you for some reason don't already have a playset of her, you should be picking her up.
Yeah, so financially, she's what? Like, is she $10-12 mark still somewhere in that area?
Yeah.
Do you think that this card has the potential to get to like Tinkerbell level?
The problem is I don't know that any cards at this point have the ability to do that because of yes in terms of, but I do think cards in general will be coming down in price as come holiday time. So, and when a second set launches, etc. But I do think I think she has the ability to be in the whatever the upper tier of super rares is. So,
Okay.
I mean, I know
Yeah.
Tinkerbell's like almost like by herself where she's priced at like legendary
I
price.
think she's probably by herself. Yeah.
Right. But whatever the
but I
next
guess
tier is, yeah.
So like the only counter is like right now Ariel is not in every Amber deck. Where Tinkerbell is in every Steel deck. So
Sure.
do you think we'll get to a point where this card just becomes a staple to every Amber deck?
Given that we've already only seen one song so far on the second set, and it's Amber, I would say yes.
Okay, cool. Let's go to the next card. All right, so we have Ariel, another Ariel, of course, because why not? The Whoseit collector here.
We did alphabetical order. That's
yeah, no, it's fine. So this is let's move it over here just in case for anyone that just don't remember what this card does, because it is currently not seeing really any play. There was a lot of hype built around this card early on when spoiled. A lot of people trying to combo to the the Wombo combo to the moon, and people quickly realizing how difficult that actually was to pull off. So the look at this stuff ability of whenever you play an item, you may ready this character is an incredibly powerful card, because it's currently the only card in the game that when you ready this, she can still quest. So therefore, right there, she's standalone character by herself, and you're basically just saying this card will always get better because more items, more playable items will just come into the game, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, like the ones you have to play now that I've seen people play trying to make her work are just really not good and are basically being used just for this ability. And there isn't a ton of synergy there. I mean, like you have like Eye of the Fates and things like that, but it's expensive. So I feel like as more sets come out, it will not be. I think the way this card will actually work is a lot of cards are pushed, right? Like, so if you think about some cards in Rise of the Floodborn, like already, like you have like that Merlin, or you have like the Minnie Mouse that was just spoiled, etc. Like these are cards that you like are pushed. Like, so if there's a ton of cheap actions, on purpose in this set, that means okay, this is supposed to be working with Minnie Mouse. If there's a ton of bounce your own cards back to your hand in the same set as Merlin, that's on purpose. I think Ariel will eventually, like, you'll just naturally over time reach a critical mass of powerful, cheap items you want to play. Like if you look at like Rumi Amethyst decks playing like 7 items, for example, like I don't think that was like the way it was intended to be played, but that to me sets a precedent for okay, if we just continue to get more and more playable items that really she doesn't have to be the focus of the deck, but like once she's in play and next turn I can play like 3 good items that she's gonna interact with. Like to me, that's where I think like it's just gonna naturally happen. I don't think she's necessarily gonna be pushed, but it's just going to happen. Like okay, this set has one, the next set has another one, like whatever. But it might happen specifically in the set.
Well, so here's the other thing here. It doesn't even have to be items. Like a card like Cogsworth makes this card better, right? So because giving this character resist makes it harder to remove. Now it becomes more of a spot removal concept. Just having more threats in like the deck itself would cause her to get better, because it's not like when you're playing against this deck now, you're like, okay, the only thing that matters is Temeteo and Ariel. Like,
Right.
so like you're just like, I'm never gonna deal with anything else aside from these 2 cards, which means it's really easy. So the more threats at it also continue this. But the cool thing about that is Ruby Amethyst's weakness is like when the items get removed, they fall down and down. This you don't really care. You're just like, I just need to play them. So like once they're in play, I do my thing and I move on with life. And aside from like Eye of Fate, where that's like a critical part of this deck, you know, it is what it is. But I do think it's interesting. I think it's a card that, you know, we'll always go back and we'll always look to it like the beginning of every set. It's just another card that you're going to continuously look at and say, okay, is this the set that this is going to like break this character?
Yeah, we've also seen 3 instances of resist so far, which means her weakness is to smash. But if for some reason steel falls off a little bit because of, and then obviously I wouldn't say falls off. I would say if the steel removal falls off, because a lot of the good cards I've seen are in steel, they just are weak to resist. That'll help her biggest weakness to me, which is smash.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so this is it's funny because like it's like a pretty obvious thing, but it's also something that not everyone always considers. We just literally just said it's not even a card, it's just Floodborn characters. And the interesting thing about Floodborn characters again is that this is just another evergreen effect that for the entirety of the game, whenever a character is made that costs less than this particular shift cost of a character, and maybe not even necessarily less than it, but just another playable version of it, I should say.
Sure.
We're always going to see these Floodborn characters come back into play. We're always going to see them come back in and create this interesting thought in the metagame. Now, in set 1, you know, we saw several Tinkerbells, and we saw several Captain Hooks for that matter as well on this, but we only saw, you know, really 1 Stitch that you want to shift onto. The other one costs 6 also, so you're not you know, really in that world. And we only saw 1 Jasmine. So like these are, you know, 2 cards that are definitely like on that uptick, but it's all of the Floodborn characters. What is, especially now because like the set is legitimately called Rise of the Floodborn, I guess my question, you know, honestly to you is, do you think we will see, you know, another Jasmine, another Stitch, another Captain Hook because it was a focus of Chapter 1? Or do you think this is actually something that we probably we have to wait a couple more sets for?
I think we might see another Jasmine. We might see another. That might be it. I mean, we already have a ton of Captain Hooks. We already have a ton of like Stitches throughout the curve. We might see one. I think we won't. Because we've already seen like a Cogsworth that's a Floodborn. We've already seen a Belle that's a Floodborn where it's like other characters maybe pushed. So I think it really just depends on like I think characters that already have a ton of versions of themselves, we might not see additional of. It's just that because there's only 1 Jasmine, I can see it, but for the other characters, I'm not so sure. I mean, we've already seen Bucky. We can't read his full text. We don't know his stats, but we know that there is some Floodborn synergy there. And I can't imagine in a set called Rise of the Floodborns that we're not going to see additional. So
I think it's just, I mean, what do we have? We have 12, right? 12 Floodborns in set 1.
Yeah. We should see 12 again, I would imagine. But
I think you might see double that. We might see 24, right? I mean, I'm bad at this, and I was even bad at this going into Chapter 1, but I haven't checked the rarities on all the new, is the new Cogsworth?
They're all super rare.
So they're still all super rares again?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. So yeah, I guess if they're all going to be super rares again.
Belle was legendary. That's right.
So Belle's legendary. All right. So that has the opportunity to change the numbers then, because in this set all of them were super rares in Chapter 1. So if we do see a legendary, if we do see rares, then you can definitely fit more in. So we'll have to just pay attention to that and see if that's Minnie's a rare.
She's a rare. Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. So right there,
we're definitely seeing more then.
Yeah, I think we'll probably see double. I would be shocked. I think it'll be 24, which would be my guess. Which is cool. Anything else to note, particularly about the Floodborn reasoning?
I think it's an ability that is being underused currently generally in the game, and I think whether or not synergy or not, just the fact that there will be more of them in general. One thing I think it will do is make decks more homogenous, because obviously you need a smaller version of the character in order to shift into it. But we'll see what happens.
Oh, Jasmine's a rare. Duh. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
I'm like staring right at it.
It's
And
right
the
there on
Captain
the
Hooks are
screen,
rare.
yeah.
They're literally
And
totally
Captain
right in
Hooks
front of my face.
And Captain Hooks are rare too.
Shout out to Clayton. You got it, Clayton. You just
They're
they're literally right in front of my face. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still think that we'll probably see double. That's my guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely one of those things that as we get more options, and it's just the evergreen ability of it. Like these characters will just always have it's the same thing as the Ariel. Like every time there's a new one printed, you're just like, oh, like can I make this one work now? Which I think is really, really interesting. But yeah, if you're hanging out in chat, let us know. Say hello. How you doing? Let us know if there's anything that we're missing. Obviously, we got some more stuff to cover, obviously. But if you have anything that you think is going to be better in Chapter 2, definitely let us know in the comments. So we have Hades, King of Olympus, which is ironically a shift character and this sinister plot ability. So this character gets +1 for each other villain character you have in play, and the obvious reasoning for this card getting better is villains.
Yeah, more sets, more villains. Yeah,
right. So in set 1, we can both agree this card's unplayable, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, man, I still don't know. This guy costs a lot. Like, he costs so much. Shift 6 is like still a lot, and it's like a world where be prepared and grab your swords still aren't good somehow. So yes, I agree that like it's gonna get better, but I still don't know that it's good enough.
I mean, we need like a 5 or 6 cost. We need like a 4 or 5 cost Hades as well.
We have a 4. We need one that's inkable, right? Like we need an inkable Hades.
Yeah, he's rare Floodborn also. Yes, that's true. So yeah,
all the unplayable ones, I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, you need a world where, I mean, there's already with 0 to hero, you're already a situation where going wide is better,
right?
For specifically that card. So if we do ever live in a world where going wide is better, and you can go wide with villains, then and one of them is some type of Hades, if he comes into play and has like the ability to act right away and can gain you like 4 or 5 out of a character immediately, then it's a totally different story. So there's potential there. We haven't seen it yet. Like the only villain I think we've even seen so far is the second queen, and she still costs a lot too.
Yeah.
So although she wants to go wide as well. So I think it just comes down to whether or not.
So I mean that helps.
Right. I think it just comes down to whether or not like there is another Hades that's printed that is inkable, and whether or not we're getting any additional support in the film.
Yeah. For me, the big problem is like the uninkable count gets really high, and like when it doesn't go as planned, you just you end up with this 8 cost dude that like you can't use, and I think that's the problem. It's like when this card is bad, it is really, really bad because A, it costs 8. B, if you have other cards in play, you're now paying 8 for a 1 lore character. So like that's my problem. Is like I feel like it's gonna get better, but it's gonna need like a lot of help to stay relevant and like actually his ability to actually matter. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Like resist is great. It's gonna help with all these things, but I don't know. I don't see it yet. It needs help. It needs a lot of help.
It's possible all he has to connect one time though, and then you win. That's the issue.
Maybe it just feels like this is way more difficult to do than like just playing like Bell in Sapphire. It's kind of the same synergy, like kind of the same thing where it's like I need to get to this critical mass number, but Bell just lets you do it, whereas Hades is like all dependent on what your opponent is doing.
Sure.
So I'm never a fan of those cards. I'm never a fan of like hoping my opponent doesn't have an answer to what I'm doing.
Sure.
Like, I'm not about it. So I think for me, this is like the first card that I'm just like, yeah, but no.
It's fine.
This is also a gift set card, so there's no chance of financial upgrades for this one, right? Like
Right.
This
You
card's
can't
just,
play the big card version. So
damn, we can't play the big card. Whatever am I gonna do?
yeah.
Whatever. Is what it is. So, all right. Our next card is Moana. So you already have 4 princesses spoiled so far. Fair. Even with resist, keeping them alive, being ready will be very valuable to keeping them around. And then Tiana is especially important to keep the princesses around since actions are shut down. So I think that's the big thing, right? Is that Moana, granted, is like the worst challenger ever, and she normally just gets completely torn away. But the bigger issue is like trying to quote set up the Moana turn is really difficult because you like they can just Dragonfire and move on with life. At least with this, there's like alternate protection, and there's also like again, this goes back to like there's more cards that are like just more valuable. Similar to the Ariel, where like this card is just like this card is as good as everything else is in play, but when everything else is in play is better than this card, then this card actually looks a little bit better. So we'll have to see.
Right.
But Cinderella and Tiana are they're both very good cards. So like we're already looking at potential great shift targets. Now neither did we get a new Cinderella yet or no? What was the 2-drop? That's right, from the promo. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, right there you'll see more of that, I guess. And it works in Amber, so you can also have the 4-cost Cinderella that is going to have the potential for shifting. But what else? Since we're here, what else do you think princesses really need? Like is Moana like her ability is very good because it like protects your card from challenging, but is it really enough? You think?
No, they need like an action card or something like that that gives them synergy. They need like some type of. I mean, Moana to me is pretty criminally underplayed, to be honest with you, because I think people are just trying to be too all in on it. But I mean, like, if you just, I mean, people are playing Shield of Virtue, so like, why wouldn't you play like a Shield of Virtue that gains you 3 lore? Like, even if they have to send all, I think the problem is people are like, you can just send, I can just send my characters into Moana. I mean, and she just immediately gets banished. But the problem is, unless they're playing Maui, it's very difficult to sees a lot of play and where we am at this. Like, you have to send multiple characters into her, and if they're going to send multiple characters into her, then it's just as effective as them not gaining lore either. So if she's able to save like the Rapunzels and things like that, and then eat up the entire turn from your opponent of not questing, it's just as good as like them swinging into other guys anyway. So I think like 3 lore is a lot out of a character that also like saves your other characters and just forces them to basically be in a situation where it's like, we have to take this character out. I have no choice. I'm like any 2 lore character that swings into her is complete bonus for you. They send a bunch of 1 lore characters into her. It's fine. They're not doing anything else. And like, they're not like, they have to take her out. So they have to wind up exerted regardless. I think people have always just thought like I have to be all in on this character, but it's like if you just play like Rapunzel and then you get to ready her, like that's fine. She's still a 3 lore character for 5, which is basically what Maleficent is with slightly worse stats.
Right.
And a lot of people just run all their characters Maleficent. Now, granted, that 3 strength will take out characters. Don't get me wrong. I understand there's a difference, but like there's still a lot of tempo gain by trying to take her out. So I think that like the 2 characters that are there, we've already seen in the set, clearly want to be. I mean, the Cinderella readying is ridiculous when she can, especially if you can sing a song with somebody else or her and then ready her. Like even if it's only Moana able to actually quest, and then Cinderella can sing a song, or you can play out of your hand, and then Cinderella can like take out 2 characters like that are unexerted. So
my addition to it was going to be like it's the same conversation with songs. Like this card gets better with songs, because anything that I'm not really all about just like, oh, I get to ready my character's protect from challenges. Like that's nice, but I would much rather be able to do something else with them. Like for me, I always like enjoyed Moana as the idea that I can almost come from behind in a way where where I'm like, oh, now I can use my princesses like double challenges and things like that to like even the board up. But if there's more songs to be sung and you can now sing, swing, or like, quest, ready, and then sing songs and get more leverage, like even more value out of it that way, that's where I start looking at it, like going, okay, like what Amber song needs, like what other Amber songs need to be out there for me to like really buy into the Moana strategy. And what else? I obviously would steal, they already have it. Like if princesses, like if I don't know that this will actually happen, but if Amber Steel just turns into like the default princesses deck rather than like the mid-range deck we're looking at, just because it has all the best songs and can utilize cards like Cinderella and cards like Ariel and things like that, it might not shock me at all if Moana just becomes a mainstay in that deck moving forward.
She's not super expensive, so it's like as long as like, and like she's not. I think in the decks that try to like over abuse her, like she just gets taken out of combat before she can swing. But if she's just another threat that's on board, like then they have to make a choice.
It's fair. I appreciate this comment. She's okay, but she's not that good. That's
I mean that's what right now, but I think she'll get better. Right?
That's how I feel about the majority of these cards. Like she's okay, but she's not that good. I totally respect this.
Yeah.
All right. So this next card, I respect it here, Scott. I do. Tell me about Plasma Blaster.
So we've already seen. We don't know what type of damage Robin Hood can do. It's another uninkable, unfortunately. I assume he's just like a prodigal sorcerer for Magic, like just does one. I think it might say like to an opposing character or something like that. I don't know what his stats are going to be, but at some point, these type of abilities will hit a critical mass where if you have an onboard constant ability to use this card over and over again every single turn, I think that there's a lot of value. If the game gets to a point where you can slow down and take turns off and you have these multiple like machine guns, for lack of a better term, that are in play, the damage will just start to add up. And it's obviously a lot harder to take out an item than it is to take out a character. So I think Robin Hood will be good, but if he's not like a 1/3 or something like that, like he's not going to be like, if he's like a 1/2 or something like that, like he's probably not going to be able to survive combat very well. But if he is like a 1/3, like I think you can just start to get to a point where you just have enough of these types of chaining abilities where if the game slows down to a point where you have the two extra ink to be able to use every turn, I think this card can see more play than the 0 it's seeing now. And I know some people have tried to use it, but it is an item which we've talked about a lot of item synergy in the past. And I do think that like if the game slows down, obviously it's terrible against resist. So you have to also there's no resist. But I do think if we have more and more of these abilities and Steel is able to slow the game down into a more controlling deck instead of a more mid-range deck, I think this card could see more play.
Okay. Yeah, my big worry obviously is just resist might be since we've already seen it on so many cards, like there's a chance that it's just a big keyword in the set in general, and maybe that's just like a flat by design because of the way set one, like the way the chapter 1 was built. I just fear that like these cards will just not like end up not being playable, and it's worse because we've talked about cards in like before where in a bad matchup you can just ink them. Well, like in bad matchups you can't ink these cards, which means they're just like utterly dead weight in like more often than not. And I think that's what's going to inevitably like hold them down. If they were inkable, they would be auto includes. So I think that's the problem here is that Steel already has a hefty uninkable package.
Fair.
So like for like the ability to like, say that this card's better than, I don't know, like Fire the Cannons is like a pretty tough thing to like commit to. And I think that's where I'm at is like, again, we're talking about more uninkable cards that are coming. I don't know that like Robin Hood is going to be the demanding answer unless that card says like deal 1 damage to each opposing character or some crap like that. Like that, fine. Aside from that, it might be exerted character, it might just be opposing character, like you said, it could just be whatever. But yeah, it's tough for me to like get on board when they're already pushing a keyword that actively like stops both of these cards.
It's possible. Then it just needs to be power corrupt, and at that point, it won't see any play. So
yeah. Well, if it was inkable, you'd play it. You would definitely it would be in decks right now if it was inkable, for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, all right, this is the more comical one, but it's warranted, right? Like this is like it's kind of funny because we talk about like what princesses need and what villains need, but like this is the opposite. This is like, well, if they do get out of hand, we have these cards that are already built into the game, which is great. And we've already seen Poison Apple in some Ruby Amethyst decks already. So which is notable to say, but so Poison Apple and Sword of Truth, they're just a reverse effect of, well, if there's better princesses in the world, if there's better villains in the world, then I have an item that can just sit and play and be utilized when it's necessary. And these are the same thing. It's the same evergreen effect, right? Like, granted, both these cards are uninkable. At least the apple is playable all the time, right? Yeah, the apple always does something. The sword does not.
Correct.
And the sword costs more for what it's worth as well. So
it doesn't have an activation code.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's fair. So they effectively cost the same, but the sword can just end up not being good at all. I don't know. You like. It's hard to say not because we're already seeing them in the decks, but Ruby is another one where their uninkable count is like high. So, in what numbers do you think these cards might end up seeing play in Ruby decks?
Monos.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So it's a mediocre thing.
I mean, it depends on whether or not it's a better option than Dragonfire. So, like, obviously, if there's item synergy, it's one thing, but it's proactive versus reactive. Like, these literally just sit in play, and the effect on your opponent of like, well, I'll play I play out my 4-drop Hades to get back a card. I'm not going to waste Sword of Truth on that. Like, can you really ever play anything larger that's a villain or a princess? Like, it's staring at you right in the face. It's just going to be taken out. Like, so at some point, like, you might have wasted turn 3 or you might have wasted turn 4, but they're going to waste like turn 7 on Hades. Or obviously, I know he took something out, but like, that's not what you want to be getting out of a 7-drop. Like, you certainly don't want to be Maleficent Dragoning something, taking something out, and then getting that Sword of Truth, like, on, and things like that. So, like,
flavorful.
You certainly don't want to be Cinderellaing 7-drop when there's a Poison Apple in play and things like that. So, like, it sets up a situation. If you can afford to take the turns off to put these things out, they're going to have like massive effect on when those cards are being played later. Of course, I'd rather have them in. I think as long as there's, but the other thing is, like, if you look at it, like Cinderella, the new 2-cost Cinderella, draw cards a card just like the 1-cost Simba. If we have more looting effects like that, where we draw and discard cards, like that's the equivalent of being able to ink other things. So if we have the ability to sift through more cards, or like, be our guest for an item or something like that, like these cards play, period, whether they're inkable or not.
Yeah, I could definitely see like a spectacular singer for items.
Right.
I don't see why not. So
right.
I could see that. I don't know that it would be in Ruby for what it's worth, but
yeah, it's fair.
It's interesting to consider. Obviously the Tamateo is an option. Yeah, the sifting thing is a really good comment. I think that's something that's probably underutilized or not considered, is that like that is a way to get rid of these dead cards, similar to the Plasma Burst, the Plasma Blaster and things like that. So I could see it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough because I really like Poison Apple in the end because at least you definitely can get something out of it. The Sword of Truth, until we see deck lists and understand exactly what type of value we can get out of it, like above curve or even on curve, that will be like probably the final nail in the coffin to see if that card's actually playable. We'll have to see. Let's just put it there right now. Do you think there's a world right now that you're playing these cards in Ruby Amethyst?
Yeah, because I mean, we see way more Rapunzels than we saw in the past. See way more. It depends on like, there aren't enough villain like all other than the dragon. Like there's like 7-drop Hades. And there's like 5-drop Maleficent. Always going to be trading down a lot of times right now with Sword of Truth.
Yeah, like
There's
you have
Queen.
Hans and Mad Hatter.
Yeah, that Mad Hatter's.
I'm pretty sure Mad Hatter's a villain.
I didn't think he was.
Maybe not. I think he's a villain.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
Maybe
don't
I'm
think
wrong.
he is.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Definitely
like
Hans. Hans is definitely
Hans is on. But you can't really look at it like, John Silver's also.
John Silver's a good one.
Yeah. It's not really about trading on curve. It's about having the ability to take off a turn to have it literally just sit and play.
Sure.
So if you can do that, and it really comes down to like if there's more draw and discard that, I think these cards can see more play.
Mad Hatter is nothing. Neither hero
Yeah.
nor villain. There you go. All right.
He's
He's
crazy.
just story. He's literally just storyborn. That's it.
Because he's
All right.
crazy. That's the point.
Fair enough.
A reason of insanity. That's the point.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Mother Gothel, John Silver, you know, like these are cards that you can definitely trade up to. A lot of cards you can trade down to, which is like not what you want to be doing, but so yeah. Okay. All right. Lots of chatter in chat right now. So we have 26-8 at locals. Oh, we're just talking about stats at locals. Congrats. Shout out to Jordan Snowdom on Facebook. What's up? How you doing? Thank you, First to 20, for confirming that I don't know what I'm talking about all the time. And then there you go. You played two ofs in Ruby Steel Mill. Okay. All right.
I mean, the one thing I'll say in general when I was making this list, I think that's the end of it, right?
No, isn't there one more?
Oh, my bad. Oh, that's right.
One more.
Okay. Yeah, I'll wait till the end.
One more.
Yeah.
One more card. Okay, so we have to Ka Heartless, and I'm just gonna just pitch it right back to you. What I like the reasoning here, but I think it's a little more in depth than I was actually prepared for on this particular card. So, like, Ka replacing Tinkerbell is a preposterous concept, but your reasoning for it is fair.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if there's a ton of resist and it doesn't add to the cost of the cards, that's the big thing. Like if you had like a 2/2 for 1 with resist, you know, whatever. Like, you know, if it was built in the character's cost built like automatically to where it just becomes not advantageous to be running as many Tinkerbells, I think to being able to push trading on board and still gaining you lore instead of having to force you to make that decision, it's powerful. I think the only reason he's not seeing, I don't know if it's a he, sorry. The only reason it's not seeing play now.
Fairly confident it's female.
Yeah, okay. The only reason it's not seeing play now is because how good Tinkerbell is.
Right.
Because to me, this card is still like a best of both worlds. Like you're still clearing the board and gaining lore. So there's a Simba that already has that ability, but is pretty terrible.
I mean, he's literally an uninkable 3/5. He's terrible. Right. It's so bad.
so it's possible that like there's ways of using this now if you can fit more 6-drops in your deck that you should. It's just that like this card doesn't sit in play long enough because usually like you just wipe the board and then whatever, you move on with life, and it's not gaining enough advantage. But again, if resist is so big that like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to play Tinkerbell, I think the fact that it's a 5/5 and still is able to affect the board and gain you lore as time goes on, this type of ability will be very important. And it's because we've already seen 2 cards of this type of ability, it's possible that there'll be more, and then this will be a side ability of what Steel can do.
Fair. If you're hanging out in the comments, you're enjoying this conversation, then hit that like button for me. Let us know if there's something we missed. Those are the cards we have for that particular segment. Scott, what did you want to say about the particular list that you built today or yesterday?
I think the set was designed very well to where it is very synergistic with itself, and I don't know that a lot of like breadcrumbs that were out there other than what we've already listed. I mean, like, you know, am I going to sit here and say Rapunzel's going to get better because there's more resist? Like, sure. Like, do you want me to put that on the list? Like, do you want me to put like a top 3 card in the set on the list? Like, do you want me to, you know, sure. I actually think some cards will get, I think more cards will get worse when you expand the pool of what's available in the metagame and double it. more than cards getting better, simply because there's a lot of like borderline terrible cards that you have to play right now that you won't see play in the future when they, even if you just think about like other vanillas and things like that. Like, I just think that in general, less cards will see play out of the set than a bunch of cards now that just aren't seeing enough play and will be pushed later. I could have made this like a 5-card list in my opinion. I just stretched it out a little bit, but it's hard.
Yeah, ironically, in our next segment, I think I have cards on my list that you could argue also get better in the set too. So I won't attribute to them now. Just catch it in the next segment out here. But I think it's tough. I think it's one of those where a lot of these cards have those Easter eggs. It has that, the evergreen effect, the evergreen ability on cards is something that you will always constantly go back to. Like the one that I don't have on here is like Jetsam and Flotsam, right? Like there's no telling that we're going to get more of those cards.
Yeah,
but they are an evergreen character that technically for all of eternity you'll be able to look back at and say, oh, there's a new Jetsam. There's a new, I can try this again. So we'll have to see if I don't think we're going to get them, but they will definitely exist moving on. Same thing with the Amethyst Tinkerbell, right? If there's more Peter Pans, maybe this is a thing. Starsky, with the captains and things like that. So there's a lot of things that like we didn't bring up, but they're also like niche, even a little more niche than what we did bring up. So I think that's why like I didn't include them or even add on, and this is why we're kind of closing it with it. But there is more. It's just a matter of like what is a real requirement to put a card over. And I think some of the cards on the list today require more than others, which I think is interesting. But all in all, anything else for this particular section here?
No.